everyone. I'm Jen. I'm so excited to be back at the Lead Dev conversations we're having. Thank you, Harness, for supporting this conversation. And thank you, everyone, for joining us both live and in the recording. Of course, there's a little bias for those that are live because you get to ask questions now. However, Lead Dev has a vibrant Slack community. I know mileage may vary for people on Slack communities. I'm in like 30. I really enjoy them, but I also don't work for a team that has a Slack. So I'm there for the community vibes. So I do recommend, we may or may not get through all your questions today. You may want to continue the conversation later. So if you haven't joined the Lead Dev Slack community yet, you're welcome to. I believe the lovely Hannah is sharing that now. And there is a webinar Q&A section where we'll add, well, again, the lovely Hannah, or one of the amazing Lead Dev staff will add the added questions, and we'll continue. If there's resources we have, we share them there. But for those joining us live right now, you get to be part of the conversation. So we can talk about this topic all day. Today, we are talking about how AI can help DevOps, and then I would like to say also about how DevOps can help AI, because DevOps is not something done, nor is AI, thank goodness, something done. So we're here today with two awesome panelists. We're talking about this concept of, where do you need the DevOps to do the AI, which I think continuous testing we all agree with. And so we don't break the stuff. And then how can AI help the DevOps process? There's been so much focus lately on AI for code. Not something AI is great at, and it's something that developers have always said they wanted to do more of. So where else can we use AI as well? So I hope we do that focus today, but we want to focus also on what you as the listeners want to talk about. So please bring your questions. And I would like to invite my panelists out and then Hardy to introduce themselves and just talk about what you hope to get out of this conversation today.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in. Sal Kimmick here. I work on helping with how to consider where this works best. And I think AI implementation and DevOps just means we need to strongly reinforce all of our best practices from DevOps. None of that's changed. And I'm really excited to talk about like pre-production and post-production strategies.
Very good. Very interesting. Hardy, please.
Yeah, Hardy Bath. I'm field CTO here at Harness. I've been here about a year now, and previous to Harness, I ran DevSecOps at group level at Barclays, where I spent the last 15 years. So heavily regulated organization, lots of challenges from compliance regulatory perspective, and how do you accelerate your change velocity in a kind of highly governed organization is a challenge. So I've led a number of transformations in Barclays from a DevOps perspective, from a security perspective, and sort of where what I'm looking forward to talking about today and taking away is kind of like every company used to be wanting to become a software company, but now I think every technical organization is going to attempt to become an AI company. So, how do we, how is that journey going to look like, right? And I'm like super excited about looking at that from inside and from the sidelines. So I'm glad to be here.
And in this situation, AI is literally eating the world. So we need to be conscious with the AI. We used it metaphorically with software eating the world, but now we have to be conscious of everything we're doing. So I'm really excited to have everyone here. And I think it's just a great conversation. So I think we should ground it in the DevOps best practices first, because we kind of need them in place. I'm literally writing, by the time anybody watching this recorded, hopefully I will have finished my book on AI enterprise strategy. So please connect with all of us on LinkedIn and continue that conversation. And when that comes out, you can get that for free. But I think one of the main concerns is that we are producing more code than ever. We, meaning the software industry, whether human or AI or both together, hopefully in partnership, are producing more code than ever. So what practices need to be in place to deal with that scale and that exponential growth?
So do you want to take that first, or I can go first?
I will give it like a general consideration because I think right, DevOps at the end of the day is I need to have successful deployments with good uptime and no security concerns, low security concerns. And that's all deployment hygiene. So the two things that I think are really important here are that there's pre-production, there's the code development space. And I was recently asked a question, like how can you prevent your developers from using AI tooling? And I said, you just simply can't, just as you couldn't stop them from using Stack Overflow, right? So that means you've got to have a really strong supply chain security aspect. But I think where it's interesting to me is where there's going to be two different sort of audiences for this. There's every company everywhere has the potential or is using it for code development, yes. But when you are looking at AI as infrastructure, when it's in your production, that can only happen, and this is allowing for like fully automated pipelines. That is only going to happen in extremely mature environments. And where I think that's interesting is right now we're seeing some of the best implementations of AI in production around you have to have really good FinOps because if it runs off the wheels, right? It's a massive financial escalation. All of that data, financial data, which is really compute cost, correlates extremely strongly to carbon. So I think we're just at this early stage of having an explosion of not understanding how to allow these to do what they can do well, which is dynamic allocation. And once we get that, we might be seeing a reduction in both lines of code and in carbon cost. That's a hope.
And the Building Green software book by Ann Curry and Company is being open source, so you can get that chapter by chapter and learn from that. Green Ops and FinOps currently are one and the same until we change the method in which we produce electricity and we cool down data centers. Your money is where your carbon footprint is. So they are very close, as you said. Hardy, what do you think companies, organizations, even the most from the more advanced, which I would say, like you said, the accidental tech companies, finance especially, is best in the best position in the AI space, to the companies that maybe have legacy infrastructure and are dealing with other issues? What do they need to adopt?
Yeah, so I'm so glad Sal went first because you hit all the right points on kind of the cost of AI running out of control and having a really kind of modern and mature FinOps capability in addition to a mature pipeline capability. And this is kind of what we are seeing. So Google at Google Next a few months ago shared a study that their Dora team did where although the code generation's gone up by 25% with the help of AI, but that hasn't resulted in, well, actually that's resulted in lower value driven to the market from those organizations because what's happening is it's like a funnel, right? So the more code going in doesn't mean it gets processed at the same rate as previously because you're like, just thinking about squeezing more water into an already tight hose pipe, right? It's not gonna result in more water being delivered to your garden, right? So it's the same concept. Your pipeline delivery has to be super mature, and kind of, you really hit the nail on the head, right? So that's kind of where Harness is really focused on is so like, hey, you're generating tons more code, but your developers are not gonna read anymore the 20,000 lines of code that is generated in 5 minutes, which is what it can do. Now you're introducing more vulnerabilities, you're introducing more risk, you're introducing more security challenges in your code. Now, if you really want to deliver more value throughput in your organization, you now need to shift the focus on the right-hand side of that code generation problem, right? Which is, how do you test quickly? How do you test more efficiently? How do you scan for vulnerabilities and remediate those vulnerabilities quickly and more efficiently? How do you build infrastructure quickly, and everything that goes to the right of writing code, which is like traditionally where large percentage of your development effort went anyway. Now we are seeing kind of, that being the bottleneck, and sort of, that's kind of where Harness is really sort of focused on in improving that throughput once a code's been written. Like, how can we help from an AI perspective on the outer loop activities, right? We're seeing all of the FinOps capabilities, all of the kind of the runtime protection, all of the vulnerability management, all of the sort of, as you deliver more changes into production, how can you reduce that mean time to recovery if an incident happens through AI? How can you get to that needle in the haystack quickly? Yeah, all of that to the right of being generated code is where we're going to see a lot more innovation happening from an AI perspective, and that is super exciting.
Let's talk about so in the whole software delivery cycle, there's different loops. We've been referring to the inner loop, the core development loop, and the outer loop. And just, mileage may vary whose job does what.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily trust when McKinsey comes up with the diagram and says, this is the developer's experience. Ask your developers what their experience is. But where are there opportunities for AI to help, whether it's the people, processes, and or tech in that life cycle? Where are there parts, writing code aside,
Yep.
where are there new bottlenecks that are coming up where maybe AI can help in this process?
Oh, can I tell you what it fixed real quick? It fixed all my developers telling me they didn't have time to write basic documentation. Now they just generate it, and I'm so grateful.
Are they reviewing it?
Yeah, well, no, this is very much just like basic, like, can you write me an MD file about this? Like, before we move any further, that kind of like, I need us to have human communicated level of where this fits into the architecture. But yeah, no, that's been lovely.
That
As
is
long as they do write, even your documentation goes into code review. But I will say real quick, the idea of human in the loop, I do want to throw this sort of just quick example out there because it surprised me, right? Human in the loop, you've got to do it. You're regulatorily required in many instances, and it's a good idea. But I was just hearing from someone that on his teams, it works better if they do not label it as AI. If it just looks, if when it comes in and it's tagged as if they can't identify it as being a non-human suggestion. I'm finding that interesting because I think that subverts the typical narrative, and that company reduced their mean time to remediation for their site reliability issues using these AI improvements by like 25% in a quarter. It's very good, very cool.
That's interesting. So what you're saying is pull requests are not marked as whether they've involved AI or not, whether in that creation, or what do you mean?
Yeah, so typically like AI for both code generation and using more advanced AI or pattern recognition to capture security vulnerabilities. So the production of code has changed in mature companies. It's going to have the input vector of all of the code that's coming in. That could be coming from Stack Overflow or from Space or from any of these like code generation or tooling aspects, right? Can't guarantee what the input vector is. Then you're usually going to do an initial scan of that using AI within those scanning mechanisms, right? That's an interesting use and application right there. Then you're going to receive a like speculative like security and SRE backlog from that. AI is very, very good right now at, particularly in code development, like successful migrations, platform migrations, things where there is a lot of very good public documentation, but it's tricky to do. So yeah, it's super useful.
It is, and I think I was just going to touch upon that, right? So the couple of areas where I believe AI is super powerful and is able to assist organizations is paying down that technical debt of migrating frameworks from old sort of versions of Java to new versions of Java, new kind of a new version of any framework that you take, Spring Boot or whatever, right? It's helping you move from kind of your how do you move your technical debt over to and how do you repay that down, right? The other one is documentation. You mentioned that's super useful. The other one is a new developer coming into an organization and trying to understand what does a code do. Like AI is very good at sort of analyzing what's in your Git repo and giving that context to a developer. Say, hey, these are the functions, they do authentication. These are the functions that do logging. Here's the function that does this. Like this is kind of what you can reuse and give you a really good handle on how the code's structured. So a new joiner in the team can have an accelerated path to become productive, right? So that I think is because it's deterministic, the AI is pretty good at giving you a result which is not speculative, right? So that's kind of that's a really good use case for AI. The other one is also anomaly detection, and I think Sal, you touched upon this already. So like you have lots of signals coming in from a number of different sort of tools and products that look at observability and sort of look at different sort of it's a seam. It's looking at where is a developer logging in from, what are they doing, is that an anomaly, is an anomalous behavior. So I think we are seeing a lot of traction in where a human would have to investigate lots of different signals that are coming in. We are seeing AI contributing to that massively and reducing that time for security engineers, SOC engineers, to be able to react to something that's going wrong or something that's anomalous in their organization. And I think that's a really interesting use case that we are starting to see. And then reducing the MTTR, again, I'm kind of repeating what you said, unfortunately, but like again, we are seeing that, and we are developing AI capabilities where kind of deploying something in production and something going wrong, you can quickly get to the root cause through the help of AI. That's super useful. The area that I think what we are going to see evolve in sort of in the SDLC is where AI agents working for humans in an independent form as part of that whole delivery life cycle is an evolution that we are going to start to see. I think that's going to come to the fore. That's super interesting, right? A human being the human in the loop, but kind of delegating some of the tasks. And what we talk about is the tasks that developers don't like doing, which is the worst part of your job. If we can reduce that or remove that, I tell you what, we'll have our developers which are happy, they are more productive, they're writing more better code, they're solving difficult problems, right? That's what we want them to be doing. And as a result, we'll retain better talent and we'll sort of have better productivity and stuff. So I think that's an area that we are watching with peak interest.
Hope you're enjoying this video, but did you know Lead Dev has lots more to offer?
So webinar, podcasts, I even like articles, conferences, events, and most importantly, community.
And even thinking about like process, tech, and people, which is how Lead Dev website is laid out, I really think this is the #1 learning platform for me as an engineering manager.
Don't forget to check out leaddev.com.
I don't agree in my experience that most companies are there yet with agentic AI. I would say it is something we need to prepare for, and these DevOps practices are really important. But Hannah Foxwell, who runs AI for the rest of us, which will be in London next month, and it's a fun, quirky AI event, which is cool. When I interviewed her for this book coming up, she was saying that often they're just not sophisticated enough or reliable enough. As one agent, it's got like 95+% reliability, which may be good enough for your company. It depends on your company's, how many nines your company goes for. But if you add more, it ends up hitting this context window. So there's this need for context-based engineering instead of prompt engineering, because we don't really hear about prompt engineering anymore. People learned pretty quickly they could have conversations and get past that. And I think that was something we didn't actually need as much of. Humans adapted pretty quickly to this. And this idea that agents just can't have this context yet. And the simple ones, it's probably easier to have just automated something. So we're getting there yet for agents, but not. I interviewed Peter Sell, who's creating, I think, a course on agentic AI, who isn't, but I found his advice really interesting. And one of the problems we have is test coverage has just never been good enough. And now we have more code to test. So he suggests to ask the agent to start with creating the automated tests first. So test-driven development, but test-driven agents, I guess. We'll have new names for everything, or maybe not, because that'll just be development now. And then it's something that he as a developer reviews before they even get started. Then if they can write the correct test, they're more likely to then at least understand the problem they're trying to solve. And then they can go ahead and implement it. And then, of course, after they implement the new feature or fix the bug, they can run the test themselves and check if it actually fixed the bug, which of course is like providing a good feedback loop for this. Sal kind of touched on this with code reviews. This is one of the biggest backlog problems, but Nathan Harvey from Dora at Google has said that this is one of the best use cases because AI makes a good sense check first review. So AI can be used very easily to be like, this isn't great. We're not saying, especially for really big infrastructure changes, definitely not the last reviewer. Maybe for little changes, it could eventually be the last reviewer. But the idea is that it can be like, well, this doesn't match, or it provides that first level of feedback for developers, especially more junior developers, so that same with Nathan said, when junior developers are looking to ask questions or even new onboarding developers, it helps them ask better questions. So the feedback that this more senior or the reviewing developer is providing is more constructive, which, let's be honest, DevOps is about shortening the feedback time. So those developers have shorter cognitive load because they're getting feedback right away. I imagine it's seconds or minutes for the AI to respond. And then the AI can also perhaps see who hasn't been assigned enough code reviews or who has the experience for this code review. So it could help streamline that as well. So there are things that are more, dare I say, boring. And as Sal said, documentation, that was the #1 thing that came out of last year's DORA report. Everything else seemed really quite blah in results, but in a 25% increase in AI usage, it saw a 7.5% increase in documentation, quality, and amount. And if there's two things in the 16, 17 years I've been doing this that developers complain about, documentation, and then the last 10 years more because of cloud native and all, technical debt. And we know AI is good at explaining complex issues. So Laura Taco just had, earlier this week from DX, has done a research into, I think it was several to a bunch of companies, and about onboarding, and AI is an equalizer in a way, because when developers are using it, it was specifically if developers were at least using it regularly daily, their onboarding, which in tech, we usually define onboarding as your 10th PR. You've done 10 pull requests, which, let's be honest, engineers are paid well. Everyone should get paid well. But you don't want anybody you've hired to feel unsuccessful at a company for the first 3 months. So it halves that by working with AI. And it also helps them catch up with people that have worked. They compared people that worked at a company less than a year to over a year, so tenure, and that closed that gap. So people are able to onboard and use faster. So there's a lot of success in AI outside of the code.
Yep.
But the code is happening.
Code is happening, and just to sort of, extend the point that you were making where developers typically struggle, and I think another area which we are going to see become better with the help of AI is writing better requirements from business analysts. And that's typically another area that developers complain about. The, spec wasn't specific enough, it wasn't detailed enough, and, the requirements weren't clear enough. And having that shift left even further will also result in better feedback loops, better code quality, coverage, test kind of being written, and the outcomes being delivered where, what you are defining as being done is better earlier on, will determine a much better quality being delivered in the product, right? So that's, yeah, absolutely agree with you. They're taking the left. I think that's another area I'm excited to see. The other area which I think we are starting to see evolve, which I'm not sure, it's a double-edged sword, right? I'll explain what I mean. What we are starting to see more of is the more seasoned, experienced engineers in an organization building frameworks and building patterns which are secured, which are well defined, and building blocks for rest of the organization to use as default with the help of AI. So when kind of, junior developers or the lines of business is writing an application in a specific language, in a specific type of outcome that they want to deliver, the building blocks are being enabled by AI because it can search the patterns quicker, right? We had this before where we had shared libraries and shared functions and stuff, but searching through your Git repository was a nightmare, right? But now you can enforce that. You can search it much better. You can, enable reuse much better. So it kind of, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you are doing more reuse, less code to write, less code to manage, less code to maintain, and less compute required to write it and run it, etc. But there is a danger that you will have less talent from a junior developer evolving and becoming that senior engineer, not having been through that cycle of learning, which is what's needed to become like a really good engineer, because you have to fail. You have to have failed a number of times. You have to have your wrist slapped by a senior engineer from time to time saying, well, don't ask stupid questions like that. Go and look here. I think we're in the danger of breaking that sort of cycle where not enough junior talent's going to rise and become that really good senior engineer. That's just my prediction. I have no evidence to back that up with, but that's something that is concerning me.
Mm-hmm. So definitely, as we're talking DevOps, the number one DevOps principle is culture, emphasizing collaboration, communication, and shared responsibility. Yeah. I assume if this topic was brought up and none of us on this call, and I hope none of the participants believe that we should be getting rid of junior developers, because that just stops the funnel.
So do you realize
how can you solve that problem then, Sal?
2025 is the first year, or if I hire a junior engineer out of a 4-year university, they did their entire computer science degree with access to AI. Right? Like, let's not act like these people don't know how to use these tools, particularly in their ability to learn and understand code. They know it better than you do. They know how to use these tools better than you do. So I think, yeah, maybe there's like a 1 or 2 year gap of people who did not begin to see AI as a tool and did not start to utilize it as a tool. And I do not think I know a single individual in my mentorship system now that does not have almost half a decade of AI code generation experience, right? So yeah, we don't have the kinds of juniors that we used to have when you had to pull somebody off the street and say, hi, this is how you turn on a production environment. Please don't ever touch it, right? If you have really good, and this is where it's like nothing has changed, right? Test-driven development, you have to do that if you want to do good and secure deployments. You have to do integration testing. You have to do scanning at multiple levels. The only thing that's changed about this is that you might be able to accelerate your development, and acceleration always raises your chances of security threats, right? But if you have a zero trust approach to your production environment, I am happy to have anyone use AI assisted code development because there's nothing philosophically wrong with it, right? And a very, very good hygienic process, right? These massive formalized and regulated systems, often we're talking your banking systems. Like the only thing that's changed about it conceptually is that like the threat model now is that if we're trying to take a journey from creating things that used to have like decision trees in order to get us to automation and DevOps, now they can be dynamically allocated by an artificial agent. This gets us from like human in the loop down to, well, in this environment, from like AI assisted to total AI automation, which I've heard people calling no ops now, and I don't like it, but it's a good way to say it. But the journey to going no ops should not be scary for anyone either. If you have the skill, capacity, workforce right now to do a low ops or automated A2A system, even in the constraints within their actual utility right now, if they go out of context, if they go out of bound, right? If they try to go on privileges that they should not, the only thing that's changed is that you think of the threat model as a dimension of time. You have to shut that down immediately. And that's the hygiene of having good rollbacks, right? You can read a book about DevOps from the 90s and it's going to tell you all of the same things. None of that has changed. So yeah, I think yeah, but targeting where and how you know in advance, right? If there's a large repository of information about something online. Now, yeah, my first step is probably going to be asking and working with an AI assistant. And it used to go be ask the maintainer that didn't write the documentation. And at the end of the day, the code itself, when it gets to production, should not be different.
Okay, so, but to emphasize the argument of junior developers, what do you say to the many multinational corporations that are deciding to not hire and foster and train the next generation of junior developers because they're like, I can do it?
Well, yeah, it's an aspect of like large workforce retention, right? So for smaller companies right now, it is going to be more cost effective for them to use AI automation with senior engineers to keep this acceleration in code development, right? Code development equates features, equates usually some form of revenue. It's highly motivated. But in large systems, in large companies, they still can and do and have to recruit juniors because if they're trying to keep something within the intellectual boundaries of their organization, they will have to replace their own hiring force. So I don't see it gone, but I really cannot wait for people to start hiring these people that are like fully like techno bionic, right? If they learned how to code from the onset with AI, they are a very, very, very different group to code with.
Mhm.
Well, that's a hopeful note for the future.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's not, it's nice. So you mentioned rollbacks, you mentioned all these things that companies should have had in place and should, like progressive and progressive delivery, this idea of James Governor coined this term that is like do things that reduce the blast radius, canary deploy, can do A/B testing, blue-green testing. Are companies doing that with AI generated code? Because it seems to me a very logical area for rapid feedback and to just and then to have the feature flags and rollbacks in place if not. Or are companies just fully, are they even releasing small enough pieces of code that can do this? Is AI enabling smaller, faster? What is it doing in this situation?
I think there are two aspects to this question, right? One is, let me answer the second part first, right? Which is AI generated code is just code. You can't differentiate it once it's in the repository, right? It's just code. And organizations which are on the maturity journey, we are seeing our customers are pivoting more and more towards that, advanced release strategies, having kind of, ability to kind of run chaos ahead of time before you get into production, and then kind of using multiple strategies like kind of blue green and canary and stuff, and then also running feature management and experimentation in production. So that's what we are seeing with as we are working with large amounts of customers of ours at Harness. That's one of the things which is extremely attractive about the Harness platform. That's what they can achieve. So they can reduce the risk of change in production by implementing some of these strategies. Now, there is another aspect which is slightly orthogonal to what we are discussing here, which is testing the models, right? So as we bring new models and test for their capabilities, I think there is a similar journey that the data science engineers are going to go on, where you bring a new model, you test whether there are hallucinations, the token usage, the performance, the capability of the model, and before you allow your developers to use those models kind of for code gen or for AI testing or for SRE. So there is a pathway which is that the parallels are phenomenally kind of close to your traditional DevOps and SDLC, where you take a model, you kind of run some tests, you run some governance rules around it to see if it will give you the same results, if it will give you the results which are within your tolerance of your organization, whether the model doesn't run away and generate a large cloud bill like Sal mentioned earlier, right? So all those things we are going to start to see within MLOps to kind of become more and more along the similar lines, develop that maturity in the MLOps alongside what we have seen in DevOps engineering, and I think that's a wave that's coming. So I don't know if I've answered the question, but I think there are two different things, there are two different aspects that we need to think about, but it's happening.
So I think it's very clear. I think you're right. We're going to see data science. It may come under a platform engineering or enabling team, that data science and engineering become closer as
I think they're going to become one. I think the DevOps engineers of today are going to start to look after the model lifecycle management of tomorrow. So I think that's what's going to happen.
Is this going to cause more burnout in site reliability engineering, in platform, in DevOps teams, ops teams?
Only if we do it wrong.
Yes, exactly.
You should be. The companies that are implementing this well, again, have not broken any of their both, right, contract level requirements, right, their uptime, any of this. But some of them are seeing it improve, right? And you want to go for the KPIs and the metrics, and you want to you can use your AI pipeline or AI aspects or implementations, try to tie KPIs to those like they were people, like they were organizational entities, and see if you are seeing the risk factors that developers hate, right? Like downtime and security events. If you can reduce those, then you're using it well. That's great. It just means you hired a supercharged engineer, basically. But there very tangibly is a change to the SDLC when utilizing AI. And this is for regulated environments, it's easy to do, so just do what they do, right? So every time you get a developer commit, there used to just be developer commit code review. Now it is a developer commit. Then you are typically going to use something like Copilot or anything, right? In augmentation, you can use like a harness orientation in this case. But the thing that I think people are missing that is easy for regulated environments to understand that you should implement, even if it's not a focus for you yet, you have to have your security and compliance check there, right? You have to make sure at that stage, before you go any further, we're not even talking to sandbox, you've got to make sure you are like GDPR and HIPAA compliant. Those are the things that cannot go any further in your system. You can automate that now, so please do.
Yes. Let's look at AI. As DevOps has always been grounded in not just the technology, people get obsessed with the pipeline, but DevOps has inherently been something about people and processes too. So if you're bringing AI, the news and maybe your company is scaring these people, these creative workers. We live in kind of uncertain times. So we need leadership to set business goals tied with AI, not say, hey, everything, I'm getting rid of jobs. You must prove that your job can't be done with AI and things like that. Instead, set business objectives that you clearly communicate. And then through the technical organization, work to put these guardrails in place and these checks and balances and everything that look at AI as an enablement tool. So I just want to say thank you so much, Sal. Thank you, Hardeep. Thank you to our audience and to Lead Dev for hosting this conversation. And then I guess I'm going to see Hardeep. Certainly, Harness it's in mid unscripted season, which is a bunch of unrecorded events. Imagine, now I know we are on a recorded event now, but the idea that a bit of YOLO. So next week on the 25th, we have the London unscripted event, and then there's finally the virtual one, which I assume by its name unscripted is also not recorded on the 30th. So these are events that anybody can join, and I recommend to continue these conversations. And I hope just everyone is careful and thoughtful in their AI adoption. This should be something that's exciting, but it will be better if your teammates are enabled to fail and experiment and to safely fail and to get excited too. Then imagine the opportunity it brings. Thank you all so much and have a great day.
Thank you.